My name's Matt Coleman. I'm an immersive futurist. I've been involved in the AR/VR business for over 10 years. And today, we're lucky enough to have, on my far right, Bill Hippie Woolf, as you heard. He's the Space Force Association CEO and actually founder. And I'll get him to introduce himself after I introduce Brad Chedister. Brad, as you heard, is an ex-baseball player, and you're wondering why we're talking about human performance, but he also runs a company called Liminal Collective. And he's also been chief advisor to the Department of Defense, head of innovation, and came up with a lot of their innovation departments like SpaceWorks, LANDWERX, and their innovation funding around that, and he'll go into it and explain that. So guys, Bill, could you introduce yourself and a bit of background and how you actually got into it, from the Air Force and into Space Force and etc.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. I appreciate it. Thanks to the conference for hosting. What a great event, because really it is about where humans meet technology, and it's being demonstrated at this conference. So what a phenomenal conference being put on here. A little bit about my background. I don't know if you want to show the video first or just wait for that.
Oh, we'll just do some introductions and
get
into it.
And so my background is 24 years Air Force as a space operator. So my entire job was demonstrating the capabilities that we had in space to support our combatant commanders around the globe. So one of the examples is I was in Afghanistan in 2002, where we provided critical technology to our special operations forces to ensure we knew where they were on the battle space, to ensure we did not have any kind of fratricide. And so it's when I retired in 2018, I said we need an organization to support a strong U.S. Space Force, and so I founded the Space Force Association about 5.5 years ago now, and over 90 companies involved with over 4,000 members. We are looking for the next technology to help educate folks about what the Space Force is. So thanks again for hosting.
Fantastic. And Brad, yeah, please just unpack a little bit about your career and how all this affects immersive technologies.
Well, thank you. Appreciate everyone coming in. Please don't crowd surf in the back, okay? It's a little bit dangerous, so watch yourselves back there. We got a raucous crowd. And please move forward if you can so you can hear us if you can't hear us. But no, thank you so much for having us. My name is Brad Chedister. I'm happy to be here and happy to sit next to folks I can learn a lot from, and also all of you. So a little bit by way of background, this was the retirement plan. So I'm retired, but I'm a recovering professional baseball player, played in the Houston Astros organization, was very blessed and fortunate to do that. Went back and got my biomedical engineering degree because that's what sports guys do, right? And I got very fortunate to be recruited and went into Special Operations Command, where I was able to work with and serve alongside and serve in servitude a lot of the guys and gals that keep our nation safe. So it was a blessing, been part of that kind of whole community, supporting that community for the last 20 years. That also bled over to a lot of stuff in the intelligence community. A lot of it started with human performance. So I was one of the guys that helped stand up in the ideals of human performance optimization within special operations, and that's kind of trickled into a lot of different fields. Was part of the Iron Man initiative, if anybody remembers the Talos Iron Man project. So was the technical director of that for a little while. Was very, very fortunate to work with some great minds and some great leaders. And then I met guys like Andy Walsh, who's the godfather of human performance. If you raise your hand, he's right in the middle there. So if you ever want to know who kind of makes all these great strides in the cognitive ability and human performance, Andy is the godfather of that. So he's thankfully taken me under his wing and became a business partner of mine in the last several years. But all that being said, I'm here to talk about kind of the liminal space and the liminal collective, and also how humans are part of the humans are more important than hardware doctrine, which is the #1 soft truth. So humans are truly more important than hardware, but hardware and software are an enabling factor to bring humans into the next generation. And so we're going to talk through that, and I'm blessed and fortunate to be representing elite sport, elite athletes, elite tactical athletes, and kind of that human at the edge. So very, very blessed to be here, so thank you for everybody coming.
Fantastic, guys. So this whole industry is, thinking about just space in general. It's a $1 trillion market and growing. When you really think about the attendees and the software and designers and the creatives that are downstairs at this event, this is probably their biggest opportunity. Gaming, of course, is right up there. But if they take a look, we're going to really unpack what are the opportunities, and they're going to explain how you actually get into this, because there's lot of red tape, and people are thinking, well, how do I cut through that? And we're going to explain some of that today. So keep your ears open for that. On that note, we're just going to play a short 60-second video. So I'll just let that play and then we'll get into it.
Trying to understand how the very best in the world do what they do, not only in athletics, but in music, culture, arts, business, military. You name it. If you're good at it, we're interested in you. If everyone could realize what they always wanted to achieve and get there, the world would be an interesting place.
So Bill, I'm going to head first to you. Look, with your extensive experience and you created SFA, or the Spacepower conference as well. What's your big initiative there, and why is this so important that Space Force, as part of the Air Force as well, why is this so important, and how do you see immersive technologies in particular? I mean, you've just walked the floor today and seen a whole bunch of things as well, and where do you see the opportunities? So if you could just sort of back into your conference as well and your initiative for Space Force.
You got it. Thanks so much, Matt. And really what the video you just saw is a demonstration of the criticality of the human performance, because it isn't just about human performance itself, but it's the interaction with the technology and how human performance continues to evolve. None better, no domain better to demonstrate that than interaction with a domain that we can't interact with on a regular basis, the space domain. And so let me just back it up to, what are the 5 domains that we're talking about whenever we talk about our interaction? We talk about the land domain, air domain, maritime domain, cyber domain we can't see, and the space domain we can't see. And so when you start talking about how the service was created, the Space Force, and the importance of having a strong Space Force to ensure a future economy, that's where SFA and Spacepower Conference comes in. And so the way I describe it is an inverse pyramid. Right now, I'd say the commercial sector is pouring between $600 to $700 billion per year into the space domain. The civil sector underpins that with exploration, represented by NASA, at about $30 billion per year. And then the current budget for the Space Force is another $30 billion. Well, what we don't realize is the space economy is leveraged on ensuring freedom of action in the domain, meaning investors come to the domain because they know they can have security in the domain. That's what the Space Force does. And that's why we created Spacepower Conference, to bring Space Force leaders together to talk about their specific needs as they try to interact with the domain. Now, most of you may not realize this. We touch space 50 times a day, but we're not able to visualize it. And that's why I'm here today, is to figure out how we can better interact with the space domain through augmented reality and virtual reality. And the byproduct is, of course, increasing human performance.
Fantastic. And just on that note, at your last conference, I've been talking about surround reality and, virtual production. How do you bring Hollywood-style AI, animation, training and simulation, to something like Space Force for the young guardians of today? I mean, how many guardians are there now?
Well, there's about 9,000 Guardians, which are the active duty members of the U.S. Space Force. And I like to say that we host the largest gathering of Guardians in the galaxy at Spacepower. And so, yes, what you did, Matt, and it was great that you brought the technology you did to Spacepower, because that's how you can start to immerse yourself in an environment that you don't typically get to immerse yourself in. So what is a vignette in which I get to interact with the space environment? That's a visualization your company has created so that people can get better acquainted with the technology and capabilities that are in orbit, and by the way, the threats that are persistent in that orbit that hold that future economy at risk.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So when you really think about it, the elite athlete, and we're getting on to Brad now, you know, coming from baseball, I mean, how did you get into innovation and, you know, your journey there, and where do you see that immersive connection, you know, working with the Department of Defense and elite athletes?
That's a great question. So a lot of voluntold situations, as we like to call them. So I got voluntold to do things. No, very blessed path. So, you know, played at an elite level, but had the opportunity to kind of to play with a lot of folks in sport and elite sport. Got trained by some of the best, had some great mentorship, then got the opportunity to level up, as I call it, even more to the tactical elite athlete, right? So our men and women that serve in special forces are the tip of the spear, right? They're the most elite in the world, and thank goodness we have them on our side protecting our freedoms. But I got the really good fortune of helping to go out, explore, engage, and empower them. Explore and engage to find novel technologies and techniques, tactics, procedures, things like that. Implement novel ways of looking at things, especially in the human domain, and then empower them to go out and do their jobs better and be more safe, be more resilient, have better recovery, have better rest, and have better performance. And that's kind of the cultural shift that we brought years and years ago in standing up the Human Performance Optimization Program in Special Operations, and that's since spread to the larger conventional force and to the intelligence community and things like that. So my job quite literally was to go out, build ecosystems of humans to empower other humans and each other to be better collectively. And so the Liminal Collective is an embodiment of that. So Liminal Collective and Andy and myself and some other key leaders, we have great interaction with like people like Cirque du Soleil, the creativity portion, right? Whenever you talk about the holistic human, you always talk about, okay, you know, physical performance, spirituality gets thrown in there, cognitive performance. Sometimes you leave behind creativity, right? So creativity becomes a massive, massive element in the human empowering element. So in Special Forces, for example, we call ourselves tactical MacGyvers. You know, you give us a ballpoint pen and a roll of duct tape and we can solve the world's problems, and sometimes that's how it is. We're out on the hairy edge with 12 of our closest friends trying to solve hard problems in austere environments. So yeah, it's been a journey, but it really is talking with folks like you and the people in this room, like who's a developer out there? Who has novel R&D, right? Awesome. Who's from a university, a researcher? Awesome, so you're developers too. Government folks? Hey, you admitted it, good for you. But same thing, right? So this is a slurry of different worlds coming together, all humans trying to do novel tech development for humankind, right? So explore, engage, empower humans, humanity. That's what the Liminal Collective is about, and that's what we're trying to kind of be the embodiment of with Special Forces, with the intelligence community, and kind of leaning in heavy to empower you all. So that's kind of it's been a winding path, but it's been an awesome path, and I get to learn something new every day by talking with folks like you.
Fantastic. I just want to get into education now, and that leads into, you know, simulation and training in particular. And, you know, obviously hundreds of millions of dollars are spent, you know, every year on simulation technologies. Now, VR and XR hasn't really been completely exploited. Tomorrow you'll see Palmer Luckey speaking, and obviously he's making major moves. He's gone back to Meta and coined a new deal. He's now working with Microsoft, but he's built the biggest independently owned venture capital backed defense company on the planet, and it's all built on drones and his latest software. I mean, where do you see drones and the training side of the business going? Because it's going to be radically changed. This is not just launching a missile now. These guys are going to be managing 4 multiple drones, and they've got to make critical decisions. Yeah, I'm going to hand that over to you, Bill, just to have a think about that. And where do you see the training going of the future?
Yeah, thanks. You kind of see it playing out right now in Ukraine. You see the drone operators actually doing what they do because the drone technology is evolving considerably just because Ukraine needs as much help as it can get in that environment. And then if you think about just drone technology writ large, really what you're talking about is the technology needed for drone movement comes a lot from space, not just communications, but also from positioning. And so you can see the similarities between remotely piloted aircraft or drone technology and remotely piloted spacecraft or satellite technology. And so the training is going to be similar in terms of you can't see where your drone is except through the cyberspace. And so similarly in the space domain, you're not going to be able to see where your satellite is except through cyberspace. The real issue is what are the threats to that environment. So when you look at it from a technological standpoint and from a electromagnetic spectrum, there's a threat there for the drone. And so when you look at it in the space environment, there is not just an EMS threat, but there's also a physical threat that's been demonstrated over and over again from potential adversaries that say, we can take out that technology. Now we have to know what are the impacts based on that. When you take out an individual drone, pretty easy to replace. When you take out a critical satellite, not so easy to replace until we have that infrastructure in place. So we have to get to what are the impacts of taking out critical capability that we know we're going to need.
So basically we need Minority Report.
Well, that may already exist as far as you know. No, what I would say too, just add on, because great comments by Bill, system of systems, right? So the job of technology developers, solution providers like yourselves, if you're involved in the Department of Defense or in the national security architecture, create an unfair asymmetric advantage for the good guys against the bad guys. That's what we're here for. And no fight's fair, so we need to be on the unfair asymmetric advantage side, right? So I like to call it, there's drones, there's UASs, there's, unmanned systems, but basically creating baseline architectural approaches to empower the human-based system with technology and allowing that technology to then app structure. You guys are developers, right? So baseline system architecture, app development on top. We have to have a common operating picture that allows all of this stuff to happen. So really from my perspective, it gets back to man-machine teaming, man or woman machine teaming. And when you're doing that, how do you empower the person or persons far forward or the persons that need help to accomplish a task with robotics, with drone warfare? So what Ukraine and other places and unfortunately wartime efforts create is the sense of urgency and the sense of now. So it also helps to identify holes in the process that we may have. We've identified a lot of holes, and as you know, our federal government's working through a lot of those now. But I would say that, don't ever forget or detract away from the human side of this, because we never want the humans to be the limiting factor in the human-machine paradigm, which now that AI has kind of come on board and they're churning through it, it's getting that way. So how do we empower our humans to be an asymmetric, unfair advantage against near-peer competitors? So this country has the wherewithal to do that, and we have the best humans in the world. I think we really need to concentrate on that aspect of it.
Will every military personnel have their own AI agent for one, and will every baseball player have their own AI training agent as well?
You already do. You got it in the palm of your hand, right? So everybody does. But, what really gets interesting is if you start digitally twinning out humans, right? Which I know that a lot of you have heard things about. You start to digital twin the human and you can create your own human digital twin agent. Things start getting a little squishy, right? You start sending your agent out to do stuff, right? You start learning things about yourself, about what to develop for yourself, how you would react based upon your agent. So I think, to answer your question, we already have it. It's in the palm of your hand. Use ChatGPT. I did it before I got up here to try to chat what to say. But, it was a joke. But I think that, when it comes to elite sport, elite warfighter, that becomes a very, very, very supporting basic kind of thing that is needed, the AI agent and that AI, to empower them to be better versions of what they already are.
Fantastic. And look, the opportunities here, SpaceWorks has a $500 million innovation fund for everyone else out there. And where do you go and learn to cut through the tape about this? And SFA, your organisation with Space Force is obviously one, but is there something that you can assist, the audience here today and how they cut through that? And same for you, Brad, if you could both answer that question.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to get involved in DoD contracting. And one is to go through exactly what you just described, Matt, which is various works programs that work for the DoD, which is think about an incubator and an accelerator program to quickly get onboarded into the DoD infrastructure, which can be a long and exhaustive experience, and probably many companies here have been through the quote-unquote valley of death, which is kind of what we're seeing now, where you see emerging technology that's come to light that could be quickly utilized by the DoD, but because of the valley of death, it's tough to get onto contract. So in lieu of getting on contract, our proposal is let's create the environment and infrastructure as a nonprofit using IRAD funding to demonstrate what's in the art of the possible, get that out, show people what can be done, and then use that as essentially a baked-in accelerator so that the Space Force then can look at it, because this is basically the charge from the Space Force leadership I'm getting is just go do it. Don't wait for bureaucracy, just please go build it. And so we're looking at a concept such that we build an application and bring in demonstrative technology into that application with some of our corporate partners so that people can see the viability of the technology much more quickly.
So you're fast tracking it. That's music to our ears. Yeah, Brad?
Yeah, so I mean, if anybody wants to corner me and talk about agile acquisition processes within the federal government, it's been my life for 20 years, so I'm happy to bore you to death or enlighten you in some ways. But what I'll say is, so who in the crowd, by show of hands, has heard of OTAs? OTs. Awesome. CSOs. PIAs. Hey, one guy, nice. All right, these are non-FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, right? I'm gonna get a little hokey with you. Federal Acquisition Regulation is the Bible of sorts that runs the federal government acquisition research development process. What we're trying to do is empower industry, academia, and government with non-FAR, faster, agile acquisition framework tools, like other transaction authorities, right? OT consortias. There's a company, like one way to entry forward into this, Advanced Technology International, is a nonprofit run out of South Carolina. They're one of the consortium management firms for other transaction authorities. They have medical technologies consortia, they have all sorts of things. You should be looking at the OTs coming out. These are agile acquisition grants, structures, research development, problems from DoD. You should be looking at commercial solution openings, CSOs. You should be looking at these non-traditional platforms that are made to increase the speed and efficacy of innovation, right? So if you have questions, please, I have a card, I have contact information. I'm here to be an easy button, but also there's ways to kind of hyperdrive if you're doing researchers up here in the front. There's 4 of you all together. It's like the brain trust, right? So you guys are doing great R&D at a university level. How can you pair with other novel inventors and creators to rapidly increase the efficacy of what you're going to transition to the warfighter, to the public, to general health, to humanity? These agile acquisition methodologies are meant to do that, but they're not always easy to navigate through. Happy to help and happy to kind of guide you in the right pathway to assist you in your journey there.
Fantastic. We've got time for one more question, and it's the $10 million question, of course. Is if you had $10 million in the immersive space working for Space Force Bill, I mean, where would you spend that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've got a couple of programs that we're working on. One is STARS, and that is an immersive virtual reality technology to help educate folks about what the Space Force is. The other thing that we're working on is something called the Space Professional Society, which is university-based, student-led organization to create an unclassified tabletop exercise that demonstrates the criticality of what the Space Force does. And so those two things are things we need help with the community to actually develop out. So given $10 million, that's exactly where I would spend that. And then I would demonstrate the successes of those at Space Power Conference 2025.
Brad, where are you going to put your $10 million?
I'm going to multiply it out by savvy investing. No, I'm kidding. I don't know how to do that. But $10 million, I would build the world's nexus on creating a place where you could have purposeful collisions around elite sport, elite warfighting, elite researcher and developer, for industry, academia, and government to come together and coalesce and flex in and flex out like a Hollywood movie set, to try new things, to develop novel ideas, and create a public-private partnership to do that at scale. And then you multiply the effects out with your money. That's the seed money to start, because it empowers every single one of you here, and it acts as a catalyst for every single idea you have in your head. So if you can do that, that's how you raise up and start with human, raise it to humans, and push that out to humanity. And that's exactly what we're doing. So if you have $10 million burning a hole in your pocket, come talk to me, and I'd be happy to help you with that. Okay,
you heard it here first. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate. Bill's come in from the East Coast, or both of you actually, so to join us today. They're available after the panel here if you'd like to meet up and chat.
Last thing I'll say is the guy raising his hand acting like he's stretching, if you get a chance to just bend his ear for a couple seconds, I mean, it is truly a gift to have him here. So again, he's the godfather of human performance, and he's been one of my Sherpas and mentors, whether he likes to think so or not. So lots of bad stuff in there too, but yeah, try to bend Andy Walsh's ear if you get a chance, please.
Thank you very much.